There are tiny moments of awe, a spark of joy, as Dorothee was also saying, which kind of could evoke a inner calm. And so they have the opposite effects, the positive effect on your mental health. They're kind of like micro moments that are causing tiny mood shifts, the opposite of a trigger. I like that word. I really, when I discovered it, I was like, oh yeah, this is, and we're very close to Christmas, as Dorothee was saying. So I really liked it. Welcome to the Healthyism podcast, a panel discussion on innovations in health and self-care. My name is Christophe Jauquet. I'm a health business expert, author, and professional keynote speaker. Every week, I discuss with a panel of experts the positive changes that are shaping our health and happiness. And for this discussion, we have a full panel. Calling in from Barcelona is our digital health connector, Aline Noizet.
Hola.
From Scotland, but living near Brighton, medical expert in digital innovation, Dr. Keith Grimes.
Fit like Abdi.
And last but not least, from Ghent, Belgium, human experience expert, Mo Zouina.
Hallo iedereen.
But on top of that, we have an extra guest. I promised her that I would invite her before the end of the year. This is the before last episode of the year, so I'm happy to have her on here. Obviously, I was introduced to her at Health Europe by our Aline, the digital health connector, of course. And to briefly introduce her, she is the deputy head of digital labs and works on the digital health accelerator program, which is presumably Europe's only in-house hospital incubator. Her focus is on creating digital health solutions with doctors and scientists to improve healthcare for patients. She also helps to organize the charity BIH Entrepreneurship Summit, is an advisor of Spark Berlin at Stanford, where she supports academic innovation teams with expertise in reimbursement and regulatory, and she advises companies on the Germany healthcare system. So easy to say that she is an expert on digital innovation in healthcare, appearing for the second time on the podcast, actually. Welcome, Dorothee Marie-Louise Doepfer.
Servus.
Quite the introduction. Good to have you again. Last time it was an open conversation that we had during health. This is the real deal. This is the Healthyism podcast, of course. Are we ready for this, guys? This is the before last one. Still
Wonderful.
some energy? Still some energy left?
Sure. Plenty.
Cool. So, in this week's episode, we will discuss the healthyisms of the past month, the month of December, which means that we have noticed some positive changes that we have seen in the past weeks and that we would like to share with our listeners. So without further ado, tell me, Aline, what healthyism did you witness in the past month?
So I have an healthyism coming from the women's health space. It was very good news. Coming from the platform Patients Like Me. So, the patient community based in the US with a very high number of patients on there who can look for information. So they just announced the launch of Aya, which is an AI assistant to help women manage their health. And it's powered by the generative AI platform Emma. So it's really like a chatbot on the Patient Like Me platform focused on women's health. And Emma is the first doctor-vetted AI for women's health. So the idea of that chatbot is that it acts as a personal health assistant, helping women to manage their health and well-being through personalized evidence-based guidance. I think that's what's interesting on the platform. So you go on the chat, but it's really based on you, your history, like the type of disease that you have. And it's really customized resources and guidance for the woman. And what they're claiming, it's really to help patients to learn how to empower themselves and to really be part of their own care team. And I really like that expression.
Yeah, and I think it makes totally sense. I was waiting for that almost, let's say, because they have 20 years of experience with patients sharing their own experience on the conditions, even the clinical studies that they've done. So it was just but normal that they, at a certain point, would use that data to train a certain AI, of course.
Exactly.
About training AI, another one that we are very familiar with is, of course, AI that has been trained on medical images. But now AI has been trained on videos from surgeries. And apparently, a research paper that was published about 2 months ago, researchers have developed an AI that allowed itself to learn surgical procedures by analyzing over 10,000 videos from the Da Vinci surgical robots, which is pretty amazing. And so basically what it does, it used real-time videos to learn itself how to, perform these surgeries, to use these surgical instruments very accurately itself. And what it did, it just broke down these videos into simpler actions and learned itself how to do it. Apparently, it's been trained. It has been looked into to what extent it is really accurate enough. But it was validated through virtual simulations and actual physical procedures already. So what this means for surgeons themselves is maybe debatable. What is certain is that the fact that these self-learning AI technologies in the space of surgical procedures will definitely at some point reduce human error and probably make high quality surgical care perhaps even more accessible. Because if robots can learn from each other, then maybe we will soon have more robots and more access to surgeries. Lovely piece of innovation, I think, that recently came out. I think, Keith, you had another very exceptional one that was a lovely piece of innovation as well, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, with what you just said with the enthusiasm there, bear in mind that these Da Vinci robots and everything, it's not just video that they incorporate, but because they're telepresence robots, they'll encode all the movement too. I think that's an important thing. It captures the actual motions in there, but still very exciting. But yes, I'm going to get onto my one just now because, it's that time of the year and everyone's starting to think of Christmas. And within the Christmas crackers here in the UK, you quite often get these little temporary tattoos, which are fun little stickers. But do you know that you can get essentially a temporary electronic tattoo that can read your brainwaves? And that was something that I thought was very exciting and interesting. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about that. And this basically comes from researchers in Austin, Texas. Now, EEGs, electroencephalograms, the sensors that you put on the outside of a person's scalp, and it helps pick up brainwaves, and it's useful for a number of different things, including diagnosing conditions. But getting them on and getting the sensors, they have to be in exactly the right place, and they also have to get past your hair, and people wear all sorts of funny scalp caps and everything like that, and it can be quite tricky. Well, these researchers have found a very interesting way of basically creating a temporary, flexible e-tattoo. And so how do they do this? Well, the first interesting part is that they have a liquid substrate that they can essentially pour onto your head, and it gets past the hair, sort of like a sort of adhesive. And then what they then do is that they essentially just use a inkjet printer type device to print the electrodes onto that substrate, meaning that you've got a flexible scalp electrode. And that allows them to do the EEG monitoring, which is a fantastic idea. It means that it's going to be easier to get these on. It's going to be easier to take them off, and they're going to be conformable as well. And over and above this flexible EEG monitoring, they've also found a way to put the connectors into this flexible thing as well. So if you have an EEG, you have all these wires that come off and you've got this great long ponytail of electrodes. Well, with this technology, they can actually print the connections. And so it can come down to a smaller connector, which might be on the back of the neck or the side of the head as well. Now, they found that this is comparable to standard EEGs. And more importantly as well, a standard EEG starts to get very, very difficult to wear after a few hours. But these electrodes and this approach has lasted up to and over 24 hours as well, which really opens up more sustained monitoring, which can be very, very helpful. And it's not just that. This technology can also be used for heart monitoring, for tracking muscle activity, even tracking sweat activity in the underarm as well. So who knew that an electronic tattoo could be so very useful?
Yeah, wonderful. And I think one of the big innovations that we see today is in brain health, definitely. I wrote an article about it as well when I looked at the trends in health and self-care. One of the things is definitely brain health, which is coming up. And I think this is shown by the next health enthusiasm as well, Mo.
Yeah. We talked about technology. We talked about AI. I'm here to talk about BI, which is biological intelligence, or maybe brain intelligence. I think in one of the previous podcasts, we also addressed that, there's memory and intelligence across our entire body. It seems that some neurons kind of replicated around the heart, so it seems that our organs have a memory. But I'm going to tap into something which might be, debunking a myth. We've always considered our brain as being the sterile fortress that needs to remain sterile in order to be able to function. And it seems that our brain would not be as sterile as we thought it to be. And why do I think this is important? Because I love the way our thinking is challenged. I love the way our arrogance on what we already know is challenged. But I love also the way the intricacies of our biology kind of become clearer and clearer to us. So recent research goes more and more into the direction that our brain also has a microbiome. We've always talked about the gut-brain axis, and there seems to also be a microbiome that helps our brain thrive. And this could explain a lot of things because that fortress was protected by the blood-brain barrier, and it seems that our oral health affects our brain microbiome. It seems that if our oral health would be degenerating, it would affect the potency of the blood-brain barrier, and bad bacteria or viruses or fungi could enter into our brain. So there is an equilibrium in our brain that is created by bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And it seems that when that balance is off, we create certain mental or brain diseases. So it seems that things like antibiotics could play an incredible role in kind of solving or improving the symptoms of Alzheimer's, for instance. So as a takeaway, brushing your teeth is a smart move. Keeping oral health is a smart move because it directly affects your potential exposure to brain diseases and degenerative diseases. And secondly, it gives a new meaning to vaccines. A regular flu vaccine that might improve brain health, or simple antibiotics, or maybe TBC vaccines that might improve brain health. One last example, there was an example of a woman in Texas too that was diagnosed with MS. No markers could be seen. And it seems that she had some fungi in her brain that were not supposed to be there. And just by treating these fungi, she kind of completely recovered. So for me, it's a top health enthusiasm because it expresses how simple things could help us tackle things that we perceive as being incredibly complex. And also it's a lesson in humility about what we already know and how we should keep literally our minds open-minded.
Lovely. It is really a nice thing. And I think these kind of evolutions or innovations will definitely go forward. I mean, we talked about the brain and with a more advanced technology, but advanced technology could learn us a lot about the simple things as well, for sure. I'd like to stay with the simple things because if you want to educate people on how to go about their health, how to manage their health, even by teaching them these simple things, Mo, this can be done perhaps in libraries. Because what we've noticed in the States more and more is that libraries are becoming key players in public health because they are making care and explaining the simple things in care maybe accessible to everyone. Obviously, it's not easy to have access to health services. We know, and in the future, it definitely will become worse. There's cost, there's insurance, there's language, there's simply the availability of the care providers. And so now what we see more and more in the States is that libraries are offering some sort of free or even sometimes paid, but most of the times free health and wellness programs to everyone. And I got a couple of examples here. In Milwaukee, there's the public library that actually hosts medical clinic that offers health advice and screenings. In Kansas City, there are libraries that have blood pressure stations. And they also lend out, instead of just only books, they lend out blood pressure kits. In Texas, we went to Austin, but we stay in Texas here. Libraries connect people to mental health resources, and they offer programs to combat isolation, the loneliness. And so all of these are open to all. You don't need any money, insurance, or even an ID. You only need a library card, let's say, to access these things. Simple things, and in the most obvious places to improve our health. Lovely health users, if you ask me. Maybe, Dorothee, let's go. I went to the States. I think you want to go to the UK now, right?
Yeah, but first, maybe I can comment why it's probably important to have this in the library. If you have been doing your PhD. your blood pressure is really up in this library. When you don't find your book, somebody has your books on a hold for 2 months and you really need to finish something. So I think they really add on some demands of the users, especially when you're on these libraries. And I don't know if you have been to Kansas City. There you definitely need some health care because of this city. Why I feel a little bit boring compared to all your health enthusiasts, but I'm German, so I need to be a little bit boring. But I found something that caught my attention, which is that in the Greater Manchester area, which is not known for providing great health, they started to integrate analyze AI into their daily care system. The NHS Trust starts a project in 7 hospitals to use this AI-based chest X-ray tool to help to diagnose easier lung cancer, which has been overseen or is overseen quite often. And why it caught my attention was like, why you don't go with one of the big providers? Why you take a solution coming from one of your former colonies, from Australia, and why it caught your attention? So this is like really something that is, for me, health enthusiasm topic. It's like a healthcare system in Europe which has not the best recognition. Sorry, Keith, to say that. It's like this. Is one of the first to actually integrate AI and chest X-ray to diagnose easier lung cancer, which I think is pretty cool. And a few days later, by surprise, Philips announced a pilot cooperation with Analyze AI, who were never interested before. But when they signed up with the NHS, Philips in a sudden announced a pilot cooperation with Analyze AI. I think it's pretty amazing how a small pilot in one of the, I think, most important healthcare systems, the UK, can drive a big company like Philips to actually go into a pilot corporation for making or like to improve our healthcare system. So I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, it's not at all boring, Dorothee. I think it's pretty remarkable, actually, and it's a very good evolution. And sometimes it's good to be challenged and be invited almost in that way to do better stuff. I think, Keith, your next enthusiasm has to do with sometimes it needs to be a little bit more boring to be successful. Could it be?
Yeah, sorry, I have a few health enthusiasms. Are we talking here about the text messaging? Is this correct? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So boring. Actually, well, it's interesting. It's like maybe sort of simple technologies, but this is a sort of lesson in how simple technologies can actually be adopted quite quickly, but they can fall off in their benefits. So I saw this week an article which led to a paper looking at a research paper asking this question: can text messages and reminders help medication adherence and outcomes? And this is a bit loud. Sorry about that, folks. This is very commonly done working in the digital health space. People are using SMS messaging. It's a technology that many people are able to use. And so it's often used. And when they start using this, actually, you often see quite a big pickup in responses. So what they did is they did a trial of just over 9,500 patients in a US healthcare system. And they used this sort of text messaging reminder system to remind people to pick up their medication refills. And so they tried this, they tried generic reminders, they tried behavioral nudges, and they also tried behavioral nudges with a chatbot type interface as well, sort of rising levels of complexity. And what they found is whilst there was an initial substantial pickup, over 12 months, it fell off. And actually at 12 months, there was no increase in refill adherence at 12 months or reduction in clinical events. And I think what's really, really interesting about this is that when we introduce innovations, whether they're complex or whether they're simple, people often look at the very sort of short-term side of things, and then they will often use that as evidence this is making a benefit. I see this time and time again with digital health innovations. But this is why it is important to follow up over the long term and why it is important to look at clinical meaningful outputs as well. I am constantly surprised, and I shouldn't be surprised, at the capacity of human beings to just find something spectacularly interesting and then about a week later, rather boring. And we've seen that with the incredible work that's happened with generative AI, and what starts out as an almost miraculous thing that people are drawn to very much becomes so what? What's next? And what does that mean? I think that means that we can never really rest on our laurels here. We always have to be thinking of something new and different. But importantly, that will work for certain members of the population. But for other members of the population who take longer to onboard with technology a constant churn in technologies might actually work against them. So it's an interesting piece of sort of negative evidence that I think is important to wrap in, that challenges some of the ideas that we maybe have. But I'd be interested to hear what anyone else has to say on this.
Well, maybe I can chime in. We work in the relief clinic, and I've had some experience in pilots too. And I think there's three things very important. First is the message personalized? What do I mean by that? Who is sending it out? Is it the clinic that they went to? Is it the physician that they went to? So I think often you get an initial spike because it's just information. But then secondly, the context in which the first interaction occurred is completely forgotten. Okay, we've had some interesting results with synthesizing the voice of a physician, especially with no-shows, for instance, right? Where as they came closer, we kind of increased the pressure, and where the physician would leave you a message that you're expected for your appointment. And then the last thing is, what is the delay between the first interaction and then the message that you get, right? So how are they contextualized? So I think keeping the personal touch, making it relevant based on the first interaction they had, and then contextualizing it and then doing it at the right time where the pressure is highest. For instance, if you would say, you are supposed to see your physician next week. Did you pick up your refill for your medication? And then the last is the closed loop, meaning if the physician says to that person, we're very happy that you were compliant, right? There is kind of an extra person looking at it, right? So I think these are all, a nudge normally is something that shouldn't have an impact on your behavior, but has. And these 4 dimensions do. So personalization, closed loop, context, and speed between the first interaction and the technology solution that is there. Keith.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I love this podcast and listening to everyone that's on it as well, Mo. It just goes to show that medicine and the official healthcare side has so much to learn from other areas as well. How to communicate with people, how to craft messages in a way that are attractive and understandable and people respond to. That's not really the world of medicine, really, is it? It's more your domain, Mo.
Well, it's incredible how we want to be scientific, but we don't integrate the science of human behavior in our communication. And that's 99% of what I do with companies. So it's always interesting to see the faces when you share that.
Yeah, and I think the things that you explained, Mo, are the things that we see in running apps, right? That's why they're so successful. It's just basic motivational approach. Dorothee, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I just want to add something. I think Mo, you just described super nicely all the points which are important. The one I would like to add is accessibility, because this is where Walgreens got super successful. They said, it's nice to have all this telemonitoring, telehealth, and then you get the prescription. But the people don't go to get their medication because in remote areas, it's too far away or something. So they were like, okay, we send the medication to your house. So it doesn't get lots in translation, and even I know in Germany, the way to make it to the pharmacy, which is pretty accessible, but then you go there, oh, we don't have it. You need to come back tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow. So this is really, even you have the motivation to do this, it just gets lost in your daily life. So I think that's important to add.
Yeah, that is BG Fogg's formula. Motivation is trigger times ability times basically make it simple.
And patient adherence is just still, I think, the company or the person that can crack patient adherence and the points that matter will be like the next unicorn, because it's crazy how sensitive this topic is, and it's so diverse about when is a patient adherence or why. I think it hasn't been cracked yet.
Christophe, Dorothee just gave you another topic for health enthusiasm. It's patient adherence, I think.
Yeah, I think patient adherence is a very good one. And I love to talk about it as well, both in my books and my keynotes. But I think Keith has something to add here.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I have often said to startups and companies, and particularly when I was working at Babylon, there was a lot of value if I could just have an app and all it did is you pressed a button and then as quickly as possible, someone delivered an inhaler. That's it. That would literally be it. And that would fly off the shelves. In my experience of working with patients, there are many other reasons that you would have to do that. But something as simple as I need an inhaler, 6 hours later or 4 hours later, inhaler gets delivered. There you go.
Well, that's in my opinion, that's two elements of the three that you need to have or to create adherence and engagement with solutions. One is indeed you need to answer the need, which you say we have a need, and then the fact that you push the button and 6 hours it is there, it answers the expectations, or it meets the expectations that people have. Now, very often what I say is that you need a third element then to really engage people, and that it needs to meet what is important in their life, their deepest needs, which I then call life aspirations. We talked about it on the podcast a zillion times. But if you can have those three elements, needs, expectations, and life aspirations, this is the source, this is the soul, let's put it that way, of any solution that can be engaging, that brings value to the end user. But what I take away from this brief discussion here is that sometimes we don't need to think about the whole crazy new technology stuff. Sometimes even the simple solutions can be very engaging if it meets indeed what patients want. However, I'll go really the other side, and I'll bring now a very innovative solution, which is the Holyverse. I don't know if you heard about the Holyverse. It doesn't have to do with holy with a Y, but it's holy with an I. Maybe it's Holyverse then, maybe. I don't know how do you pronounce it best. But it's a virtual world where your digital avatar is based on your DNA. Something entirely new. What they try to solve, they say, is that the virtual spaces today, all these avatars in it, they are pretty generic, and they don't really truly represent who we are. Obviously, there's the visual part you think of first, but what if we could include DNA? So in the Holyverse or the Holyverse, avatars mirror your physical traits more, but also your genetic makeup. And so they make your digital self look and act more like the real you. And by these advanced DNA decoding that we have, this technology that we have available, we could include that in your avatar to really make it personalized, which means that beyond your appearance, these avatars can provide insights into your health and lifestyle to help you make informed choices. And if we talk about, the metaverse and what it could mean in healthcare, I think that would be the necessary move forward. So it not only makes sure that we have online interactions in the virtual world, but it makes them meaningful and personal to your own health. It's built on, for the technologists amongst us, it's built on the Polygon blockchain technology, so that it remains safe and secure, of course. So that's the whole opposite of texting messages. We're going into a world where it is entirely virtual, and where even your DNA, maybe even your microbiome, maybe even things related to your health, to your brain, more can be included in that virtual avatar. How's that for a future look, huh? But back to reality. Aline, you still have one for us, which was very remarkable in the past month.
Exactly. Well, it's actually very recent. Just a few days ago, Bayer, the pharmaceutical company, announced the acquisition of Caracare. So Caracare is a German DTX company focused on IBS, inflammable bowel syndrome, and they have been part of the DIGA directory for some years. So for me, it was a very special news because I'm an ex-Bayer, so it's close to heart, and I'm really passionate about DTX. But when I heard the news, I'm like, if you remember, back in March, we talked about that news in the podcast that Caracare had been acquired by Mahana, which is a competition, so a DTX company also focused on IBS in the US. Which was, for me, was a good news at the time because, consolidation, I think it's nice. But I'm like, how is Bayer buying them if they were bought a few months ago? So here's kind of the bad news of the story is that it seems that Mahana has filed for insolvency. That's what Bayer was able to buy them. But on the positive side, and I think that that's the good news, that we really see this is a big strategic move from Bayer, and it's really aligned with their willingness to support patients in a more holistic way. And that's something that they were doing already at the time when I was there, really accompanying the patients and their pharmacological treatment. And that also relates to what we were discussing in the last episode when we were talking about frontiers, when Click Therapeutics were talking about software-enhanced drug treatment at Frontiers. And I think that's also a good example, no? where those patients are taking their medication for IBS. And now from spring 2025, they will have access to Cara Care to accompany the treatment, to help them with the symptoms, symptom management, also some recommendations on diet, what to eat, etc. So that was the good news for me, that we see things getting real, and I'm looking forward to the next month to really see this in action.
Yeah, lovely health enthusiasms, all of you. Thank you for all of these health enthusiasms this month. And of course, as per usual, I have some unusual ones for each one of you. So, Keith, I see you're really happy with it. So I'll start with you then.
I love the strange ones.
Tell me, Keith, what are glimmers and what do they mean for health and self-care?
Oh, goodness. Glimmers. What are glimmers and self-care? Okay. Glimmers, I'm going to take a guess that glimmers are AI-generated insights based on a person's wearable data or anything like that shine and light the way towards a healthier person. There you go. That's my guess.
Hey, you sound like a marketeer now. Could be definitely a pitch for one of the other AI solutions. Do you? Anybody else has an idea? Because Keith is totally not right. Dorothee?
Well, glimmers remind me of like nice sparkles, and maybe they help with my mental health. So, I'm a Christmas person and I like glittery, glimmery, these kind of stuff. And it really makes me happy. So I thought it might go in this direction.
Yeah, well, Keith, almost. Keith, what are triggers?
Glimmers and triggers. All
no,
right.
what are triggers? What are triggers? And mental health, for example.
Oh, I see what you mean. So yeah, triggers would be any kind of environmental stimulus or internal stimulus that leads to a very rapid sort of automatic response. So a person might have a distressing previous experience and something similar might trigger the emotional response and physiological response.
Exact. And so what is glimmer then?
Oh, I don't know. The opposite?
It's the opposite, yeah.
Ah, there you go. I knew I'd get there.
So it's the opposite of a trigger. There are tiny moments of awe, a spark of joy, as Dorothee was also saying, which kind of could evoke a inner calm. And so they have the opposite effect, the positive effect on your mental health. They're kind of like micro moments that are causing tiny mood shifts, the opposite of a trigger. I like that word. I really, when I discovered it, I was like, oh yeah, this is, and we're very close to Christmas, as Dorothee was saying. So I really liked it. Let's see, Dorothee, if you can find the next one as well. What is cognitive shuffling?
Oh dear. When I hear shuffling, I think to shuffle snow in front of my house. Well, I can have maybe a guess. It means you might move visual experience you have seen from one point in your brain to another.
Not exactly, but it has to do with brain. Maybe Mo has an idea if we're talking brain. And
cognitive shuffling might be allowing you to believe in something you never believed in, or maybe resetting your biases, or maybe I think when I think about it, I think it's about what would help me reset my bias and kind of open perspective to think about something that I wasn't supposed to think of.
It is sort of right, but it has to do with sleeping. So if you're sleeping and you're stressed, you're thinking about, your next presentation, maybe appearing on the Health Enthusiasm podcast, and it keeps you awake because you still need to find your health enthusiasm. Maybe it might keeps you awake, right? And so cognitive shuffling is a way of making sure that you focus more on neutral, random thoughts. And so you could, for example, think of health enthusiasm, and then start of thinking of words with the letter H first. And you try to find all sorts of words that start with a letter H. And then if you finished, you start with the letter E, and then you go to the letter A, and so forth. Another way of cognitive shuffling is letting your brain flow. I also use it sometimes when I meditate, is going from image to image. So you're at the sea, you see the sun, you think about sunglasses, Ray-Ban, Facebook, online computers, Apple Store. So you really just let your mind flow wherever it goes. It's cognitive shuffling to avoid thinking about the things you shouldn't be thinking about when you're sleeping. That is cognitive shuffling.
Well, I think the challenge is, I think you cannot not think. But I think in meditation is going from the head to the body might also be, just thinking, how does my butt feel in this seat? So how supportive is this thing? So you could think of things that are really close to you. And yeah, so
Exactly.
that would be a form of cognitive shuffling too. Thank you for that. Wonderful.
Lovely. Aline, it's the unusual ones of words, although for Mo I have another one, but I have another word that I want you to think about. What is the whisper verse? So we talked about the holy verse, we know we have the metaverse, but what could be the whisper verse?
So maybe it has to do also with mental health and like a way like to whisper like very low to help people relax in a metaverse setting with VR.
It's not exactly that. I think when it comes to mental, it's an augmented mentality, sometimes they call it as well. So the whisper verse is also called, but I think it's more confusing by saying this than it is actually helps. So whisper verse, maybe I think Keith might have an idea.
Two things come to mind. And the first one I went to before Aline had her mention there was actually Whisper's the name of a voice to language model from OpenAI. So I started to think about the Whisperverse as the kind of latent space of hallucinations that you get with Whisper. You can then explore, as in, when you have a conversation, all these sort of probabilistic like diversions happen, and then the Whisperverse is essentially this sort of like probabilistic space. But I think it may not be that, unless you're nodding. No, it's not. I'm going to come back then. So the Whisperverse essentially might be that space, which is below the audible, as in just below, you enter the Whisperverse by focusing on those things that are quieter and normally overwhelmed. But that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm starting to think of Inception now.
Yeah, maybe.
Final chance, Dorothee. Give it a go.
I think I would like to add on, Keith, because in my program we work at the moment on an AI or language solution that helps with inaccuracy. And there they use this whisper thing as well. And so like when you whisper, it's not very accurate. And if the physicians don't speak like in an accurate way, then the AI puts it in the wrong words. So maybe this is something that goes in that direction.
Oh, Mo, go ahead.
Yeah. I think currently AI answers to concrete questions we ask, but maybe a whisper is something you hear when no question is asked. And maybe you are, you're just being yourself, and then you get, it's interesting thing. And there's no prompt, but they just plant seeds into your brain.
It's exactly that, actually. So the metaverse is a virtual world. The Whisperverse is actually the combination of, if you will, of AI and augmented reality, but also voice technology. And so what you have is that we have these, Keith, you have it, the meta glasses. But we also have our earbuds that can actually speak to us. You can have a conversation with your Facebook meta glass. And so the idea is that it can listen to your environment, it can see your environment, and it can give you the right information at the right time. Maybe reminders, maybe some piece of information that you are missing at a specific moment, and it is whispered into your ear through the glasses or to your earbuds, or maybe the pendant that you might be wearing very closely to you. And it is said to be probably as big as the metaverse. This is obviously marketing shizzle. Oh, you have the pendant, Keith. Let's talk about that in a sec. So it's about to become as big as a metaverse, but close to you. It's like your personal AI companion that whispers in your ear.
I have a big problem with that. Why do I have a big problem with that? Because it shifts what a whisper means. Things that are whispered are often secret or valuable. You whisper to your loved one. You whisper things. So often when the tone goes down, it is secretive, it is scarce. If there is abundance in a whisper, we kind of reset everything a whisper meant. I just had to share that.
Maybe.
Yeah, let me just share one experience. A friend of mine never got an answer to his mail. And then he sent a mail in a typo font, 2 points. He made it really, 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 really small. And then people were going, but what did he send me? And then they answered because he made it incredibly small. So rather than shouting, right? And he says, this is really important. And then rather than putting it, a shout out with exclamation point, he sent a mail in a point too. And then people were so this is how we have to, in the attention economy, I think this is a great example. And I would love to have whispers stay what they are. Anyway.
Okay, fair point. Keith, you showed us the pendulum here on the video.
Yeah. I'll show you this now.
Tell me about it.
So this is a Claude AI pen, and it is for transcription, essentially. Now, you can get Claude, it's an American company, and you can get like a credit card sized one. It just does transcription. It does audio recording and then transcribes it, and then we'll create a summary. And a lot of my GP colleagues really love it because it's incredibly convenient. Now, you can, of course, do this on your phone, but there's something about a hardware device that is immediately available. Just press a button and it goes. Just takes that little bit of friction off, which means it's very easy to use. Their latest device, the AI pen, which you can wear on a necklace, or there's like a wristband or a clip-on or anything like that, is great. And I'll tell you something, I absolutely love it, because all you need to do to start it is you squeeze it and it starts, and you squeeze it and it stops. Battery life is over 24 hours. So I've been to conferences and it captures all the talks, all the conversations, the whole shooting match, and does a very, very good job in transcription too. Always done with consent in these situations. You don't want to be speaking to someone having a sort of whispered conversation, Mo, and then find that this gets captured. But yes, it's basically there to just help capture that. And I find it really helpful because when you're at an event, you're meeting a lot of people, you can't remember who you've spoken to and everything like that. It keeps you much more in the moment. And there's something about technology helping you stay in the moment that I see time and time again as the best use of technology to stop you being distracted. And this is one.
Okay, I'm not going to ask whether it is GDPR compliant, but let's just leave it out there. Mo was talking about the inattention economy. If you're interested in that, you can go to episode 17 where we talked about the inattention economy. Mo, I haven't forgotten about you. There's still one for you left, way up your sleeve. I think it's really something that you might like. Question: how many senses do we humans have?
11.
That is 3 more than I would ask you. So you can
maybe
name
9. So
there's 8 in my opinion. I mean, in my research, but go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just challenging the status quo, because we always think of senses as the 5 senses, but we can sense temperature, we can sense wet or dry, we can sense our environment, we can sense. So I think the old adage, or just having 5 senses, completely downplays the intricacies and the beautiful thing of our. So there are senses that we're not taught, and we are also don't leverage it. So of course we have smell, we have audition, we have taste and things like that. But we can position ourselves in a space. We know whether or not we have an equilibrium. We can sense wet or dry. We can sense heat or cold. So I think we're downplaying our biology in terms of senses.
Yeah, totally right.
Yeah, and I was gonna come in on that as well. I mean, there's that sense of thinking as well, that I perceive the fact that I am thinking. Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating area, the idea of sense. And of course, the vast majority of everything that comes into us as sensory input, we're not even aware of, at least not consciously aware of. Constant stream of information coming from every part of our body, proprioceptive information, just as you said there, Mo. And I'm always struck when people talk about artificial intelligence and, modeling the neocortex, the sort of the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that works. And when I give some talks on this, the number of neurons and synapses in that part of the brain is getting around about 25 trillion synapses in the thinking part. Well, guess what? The cerebellum, which is this kind of automated kind of positional and muscular movement one, has over 80 trillion synapses. Our brain is mostly dealing with things that we do not perceive, and these are our senses.
Totally right. And I knew more that you would like that one, right?
Thank you very much for that. I like you too, Christophe.
Anyways, thank you all for all your health-enthusiasms. It is a health-enthusiasm world indeed. So many positive changes are making our world a little healthier and happier every day. Time to wrap up the Healthyism podcast for this week. Thank you for listening. If you like this show, hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. Actually, we've grown 70% almost in subscribers this year, so do the same. You can also visit healthyism.com to subscribe to the newsletter and learn more about our panelists. For now, I'd like to thank our panelists for their health enthusiasm. Thank you, Aline Noizet, Dr. Keith Grimes, Mo Zouina and Dorothee Marie-Louise Doepfer. My name is Christophe Jauquet. We are the Health Enthusiasm panel, and we'd love to see you again next week for some more Health Enthusiasm. Ciao.